Well, it's 12:02. We can get started and chatting. Welcome to everybody. I'm seeing some familiar faces from previous events like this, so thanks for attending. I'm Don Wetruba, the Executive Director for MASB. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to share with each other and to share with MASB what you have going on. Just a couple of kind of housekeeping things. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, just pop open the chat window on your call and feel free to type things into there and we can get to them if you have anything specific in that space. We also have the ability, if you would go into where participants are, that gives you the ability to raise hands. If you want to make a comment, we'll ask you to throw up your hand or put in the chat window that you'd like to have an opportunity to speak. And I will first actually start with, today we'll spend most of our time talking about what each of you are doing and ideas that you might be able to share about what you're doing for graduation, what you might be doing for teacher appreciation. But before we get to that, I would be interested in hearing over the last couple of weeks, just if there's been any significant, beyond listening to budget news, which we all aren't liking what we hear, but struggles or situations that you've ran into at the district level that you've really had to overcome as a district in the last couple of weeks. As I know some of you have had, seniors being done with school, issues with parents coming back to the school district to get, pick up blockers and things like that. I would just be interested in if there's anything that you feel that is worth sharing with the other members about situations that have cropped up that you felt you've dealt with successfully that might be guidance in case somebody else faces that same situation. So I'll just pause and say anything that people want to share just generally about things that have happened in their districts that have been kind of a surprise, but you've dealt with. Nobody's jumping up, that's okay. If you want to share something, you throw it in the chat or, oh, I do see a hand going up. I don't have a name, I have a Galaxy J3 though. And I will say to make sure. Laura, is that you?
Yeah, it's me. I had headphones in and they're not, for some reason, I couldn't hear anything. I don't know if it's something that anyone else is dealing with, but today we got notified about prom. We've had parents just pushing back that they really want to have a prom. And we've gotten guidance from Kent County Health Department. They will not issue an absolute no, but they have given us reasons why we should not have a prom. But the pushback from parents has been just unbelievable. So I'm just wondering how other people are dealing with that.
Yeah, and at least I was able to, I think, catch what Laura was saying. Prom is an issue in her district. And, of course, a lot of districts have faced this year. And you're the first one that I've, heard of like significant pushback on not having the prom. I know Brad Banasic is on the call today. Even separate from a local health department saying no, Brad, you might weigh in on this. I can't imagine under any of the executive orders right now how anybody would be able to say that doing a prom would fit within the parameters of the EOs at this point. Brad, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that, Don. I interpret the EOs very narrowly, and unless there's a specific identified exception within the executive order, you can't do it. And the most recent executive order allows for social gatherings up to 10 individuals in the UP and select northern counties. And obviously you can't even have a prom under those circumstances. So having an in-person prom under the current orders, clearly not an option.
And I see Laura posted on the chat that they've moved it to June, but I mean, at this point, I would still be hard pressed based on the conversations that our office have had with the governor's office and even things that she's said in different things. Even if we move to a place where, like we've seen with the 2 regions in the state starting tomorrow or whatever day this is, on Friday it starts, that they're going to be open. You know, there are still restaurants are at half capacity. They're still limiting group size. You know, I would expect as areas downstate get released, we're going to be in a similar situation. So I would be hard pressed to believe that we will be in a place, even in the month of June, where gatherings of any size will be allowed. And frankly, as we've looked at this as an association, if you look at the governor's phases now, phases 1 through 6, phase 5 is a phase where she does have, and it's not just the governor's, it's her council, but phase 5 is where she does say that schools likely could come back into place and other kind of essential functions of government, which schools would fall into. And then phase 6 is when there's a vaccine and we kind of return to some normalcy. I don't even anticipate very possibly that school events in phase 5 necessarily will fall into what we consider essential as it relates to education. I think there's a real possibility that as we move into that, we might still be in a place where, you know, will they allow, I think the questions that we don't know, but not even proms, but if we run football season in September, will they allow, you know, the stands to be full, or will it be football season in a different way without fans or with limited fans? So I don't think there's an answer, Laura, to say, you know, what do you give for an answer to push back, other than I think even in June, unless something changes significantly, I don't expect, even with relaxing like they've done in the other 2 regions, that size of a group will be allowed. And of course, I think they're going to maintain social distancing for months to come, and that's pretty hard to pull off in a prom situation. And so, yeah, I mean, that's too bad that you're getting the pushback that you are. I can see from a few others that have chimed in here, others have canceled and not had the pushback from parents. I think it's probably up, you know, individual district expectations of parents, you know, area of the state based on like how far, you know, how much impact has COVID had in your area. That will make a difference. But you're in a relatively populated area, so it's not, you know, without, and you know, they haven't, it's not that you're in, you know, Escanaba where they haven't experienced quite the volume of sickness. So that was a great one to throw out there. I don't think a lot of people had that conversation. So that was a good one. Any other kind of current issues? I see Edward Miller, you've got a hand up. Something going on in your district that you guys have had to deal with that you think you've done well with, or you need some answers on? I can't hear you, but you're not muted either. Okay, he might have dropped, he might have had a problem. I guess I will ask, is everybody hearing me well? Okay. Nobody was moving. I'm like, oh, okay, because I have a little bubble that popped up. Okay.
We also have Pam
I had a
Green
bubble that
with
popped
her
up
hand
that's
raised too.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Pam.
You're okay. In Farmington, we kind of did a trio type scenario for most, our graduation, our proms, all of that. So we kind of did a great situation, a good, and a it's okay situation. We surveyed our students and our parents to see, because we were concerned about pushback. So we felt it was really important to put that survey out there and get that feedback. Where was our community? What were they thinking? Overwhelmingly, of course, it came back that they want an in-person graduation, in-person prom, etc. But looking again at the governor's orders, looking at our area, we know that may not be possible. So we kind of settled on, for all of these things, kind of an August date. And we've got that as a tentative, but we know that may not be happening. And our students are good with that right now, is that we've given them a tentative date with, if this does not clear, it does not move, then we wouldn't be having it. The first would be our normal venues. Our second option would be our stadiums or our football fields. And the third would be virtual. So we kind of have a layered approach to it. But so far that's working. Our students also gave us feedback. If any of these events go into the second week of August, by that point, they're moving on to the next phase of their life. And so then we would just not move into those. So we kind of have that trifecta set up. So.
Thanks, Pam. And I will say, as we get in, I do see, Michael, your hand up. As we move into this conversation, the first thing I'll say, and Brad kind of alluded to it when we talked about prom, like as the current EO reads, MASB, and we are not your legal counsel, we are interpreting it pretty narrowly, and even some of the things that districts have done up until now, I think have come without any, penalty from law enforcement or, pushback from the governor's office. We might still interpret them for ourselves, or Brad would, to say, hey, it's not an exception, so therefore it's not allowed. So understand and sharing today with what people are doing, if you're going to go, if it's not, August is a different situation because we don't know what that looks like. But if it's under the current EOs, understand that you're going to want to, if you get an idea today that sounds really interesting, vet it very well with your attorneys, maybe vet it. I talked to a district last week that they did a parade escorted by their county sheriff. And so they probably felt legally they were in a pretty good space in that environment. Whether they were or not, that was, for them to deal with. But at least they did as much as they could to make it feel like they had checked with law enforcement and authorities to say it was a good way to go. So just recognize that is, we're not here to kind of judge legalities. We're here to just have you share with each other the innovative ideas you're coming up with, because I know a lot of districts are really struggling with how to help districts. And I did see one of the people asking about whether it be prom or graduation. Also, if you have any ideas not only on how you're doing it or not doing it, if you've done anything on the helping parents and kids cope with not doing it. Many of these are rites of passage that are going to be very difficult for kids to miss, and for parents for that matter. If you have any ideas in that space or how you're helping them cope, I think that would be worth sharing. So Michael, your hand is up. I'll go to you first.
I mentioned this, I think it was yesterday, and I've been doing quite a few of these. So some of you heard this previously, but for those that didn't, we've got graduation scheduled for, I think it's July 22nd, towards the end of July. And it's at a local arena, ice arena, if you will. And it would be I believe it's going to be the board and some of the administration and the graduates. And it would be just like we always do it. But at this point, there will be no parents. There'll be nobody else attending. We'll only allow a certain number of graduates at a time, but they will walk across. They will get their diploma. And it's our hopes that things will loosen up by then, and maybe we can have some parents, and maybe we can at least let the parents in of the students that are walking, and we'll adjust it best we can as things lighten up. But we'd hope that putting the graduation that far out, and it's done a lot for the students and the parents. We've given them something. But in regard to the other stuff, I don't know. I'd have to ask if there's been things that deal with the emotional side of it. I do know principals and teachers, superintendent, and even some board members have had some correspondence back and forth, but it's not a program per se. There's not, to my knowledge, there isn't if you're struggling with this emotionally, call 1-800 whatever, or email to so-and-so. It's just been a one-on as needed, as we're contacted, we respond, but not a program in place per se.
Thank you, Michael. And when future people talk, make sure you say what district you're from, because sometimes that's relevant to, you know, what one district is doing compared to yours. I see Mary Hanser has her hand up. If Mary, you'd like to share.
Hi, Mary Hanser, Oxford. We have a great community, a great group of parents in this area too, who have, I think part of their therapy getting through this is helping the students, helping the seniors. For graduation, we were at DTE, scheduled for tomorrow actually. We were able to move that to, at this point, to June 30th. That was a date that we were able to secure after doing a parent and student survey, you know, what was most important and what time of the year was most important. Did they want to do it end of June, end of July? So we took all that data and we were able to secure June 30th, but we still have no idea what that is going to look like. And that's what we put out to the families. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know who will be able to come. We don't know anything more than anybody else does. But the overwhelming interest was in the students walking the stage. That seemed to be the most important, that the students could do that. And that's what I've heard from some students too, mine included. She just wants to be able to cross the stage. So we're doing that. We did a cap and gown pickup last week, Friday, at the high school. So we had a DJ, one of our deans was calling out students' names and people were clapping as they came up to pick up their caps and gowns, as well as dropping off other materials that they may still have, books and whatnot. We have a long street that goes up next to our high school, and it's a tall hill. We have over 500 seniors. The administration made yard signs for each student. So there was a whole line of 516 signs going up the street with their pictures, their school pictures from that year and their name. And they're doing something else with them. It's a surprise. They're going to be doing something else with those signs. But so the kids got to see that. They got to see some of their teachers. One of our favorite meals here at the high school is Wildcat Mash, which everybody loves. So when it's Wildcat Mash Day, everybody gets hot lunch, everybody. So food service got together and made lunches to go for all the students so they could all have their final day of Wildcat Mash. So that was pretty cool. We picked up on, parents have picked up on things like adopt a senior. So actually, I just saw the lady driving up who adopted my daughter. So you can post your own child in the Facebook group and connect with other parents in the community who don't have to be senior parents, but just community people who might want to adopt a senior, and just bringing them whatever kinds of gifts that might be appropriate, you know, just something to make them feel special. So we've been doing things like that. Like I said, the community stepped up a lot too. As far as the supporting each other and when the way people are feeling, I think some of the therapy, like I said, for the families is doing other things for the seniors, because it's just not really replaceable, and everybody's, I think, in the same boat about that. So we're turning to what can we do and still have fun and still celebrate our seniors. Oh, they did a cute video too. I think some of you have done some videos. They did a real cool video too, just shouting out to all the high school teachers. And I think they did it for the elementary schools too. So for each of the groups, they did a little video of proud to be a Wildcat in some kind of design. It was really nice. So that's it. That was a lot, but that's what we're up to in Oxford.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. And if you're following it, and I believe, and Stacy Bogard, you can correct me, when we are recording this, and I think that also includes the chat section, because there is some really good stuff going through that people could refer back to. Some of it's what you've mentioned already, or some of you have mentioned, but not all of it. So when you need to go back and look at it, and other members can look at it, to be able to see that. So I know somebody mentioned virtually, and I follow a number of school districts on Facebook just through the nature of knowing all of you kind of thing. And getting the community to participate beyond even the students is, I think, always a helpful thing too. And I did see one district that was posting short videos and snippets on their Facebook page of every graduating senior that just kind of talked about who they were, and what their accomplishments, what their favorite thing was. And, it allows the community then to engage, to see what is going on, and the school district was posting that out. So, Jan, I see your hand is up.
Can you hear me or not?
Yep.
Okay. I'm in the Upper Peninsula, so we're of course in the region that is affected, but that really hasn't affected our plans because of the size. But similar to what Mary was saying, they picked up their caps and gowns. We're having graduation next weekend, just in cars in a parking lot that is large enough. We only have 60 seniors, so it's large enough. They're allowed one car, a family only, so that's how we're doing it. And then the superintendent, the high school principal, will actually be sort of out in front of the auditorium. And similar, we've posted, what Don was saying about each senior. We do about 3 a day. And so, what they're interested in, what their plans are. The reason we decided, well, first of all, parents really, and the kids weren't real interested in having it later in the summer. And if you notice, like Northern, for example, Northern Michigan University, which is where most of our students go, they're opening early, very early, August 10th, so that they can dismiss everyone at Thanksgiving at the end of the first semester. So it impacts August. And so that's where we're at right now. The board also, we all wrote, we all wrote a statement, sort of, our words of wisdom, etc., to the students, and that was sent to them. So that was just another nice thing that the board did, I guess, or that I felt it was a nice thing from our old perspective, being all old people,
All right. See, Edward, your hand is back up. Did you want to share with us? Hold on a second. Yeah, we're not hearing you, and I don't think you're muted anymore. Nope, sorry, we can't figure out why your sound is not coming through. Let's see, Ken Stahl, I see your hand up.
Hi everyone, Ken Stahl, Brighton Schools. You can probably see from my background, we did a big sign thing about a week ago. 6 o'clock in the morning we went out. We have signs with pictures and their names on in front of our school. You can only see a portion of it. It goes about the same distance both directions. Had a lot of people going there, visiting, taking pictures on Facebook, next to their sign. It's been really a great experience. Our plan on the 29th is to have a drive-through for pickup of gowns, and they're supposed to take their sign as well, so they can put it in their property or wherever they want to put it. And we're looking at something in June. Our biggest idea so far is our stadium. It's new to all of these kids in our district. They'd be the first and only ever to be in our stadium for graduation. We usually do it at Eastern. And something, depending on what the EO says at that point in time, if we can have the family walk through on the sideline while they go up and get their diploma, and at the end have an area underneath the goal line where they can get their picture taken, that would be our plan and hope at this time.
Thanks, Ken. John, I see your hand up.
Yeah, at Grand Haven, we've got right now 2 dates that we're looking at, one in June, one in July. Most of the people want to do it in June because we have several of our graduates going into the military or other things that they need to get done quickly. But with that date in mind, they're looking at two different things of doing it, either in the field house where we can have everybody in the field house at once, so we can do the social distancing, just the students, and then me as a board member, our superintendent, principal, and I think one other person in there to have them come across the stage, and we'll still do our social distancing. And we're going to be streaming that so that parents can see the actual process in real time. Another way we are looking at is in our Performing Arts Center and do it in groups in there. But I think the kids are all looking at being in the field house all together in there rather than going into the Performing Arts Center in different groups. And there, tomorrow night would have been their actual graduation night. And one of the parents has organized a parade going from our middle school in town, going through town down past the state park, and then ending up at the high school in there. And that's tonight at 6:30. So they're trying to get the entire town out along the whole route to line the route. There's plenty of room for social distancing to do that. So the kids, don't really care about the prom as much. It's, this graduation thing and getting that diploma makes a big deal to them.
Just something that crossed my mind as you were talking, John, about the, setting up the parades and social distancing. I mean, moving beyond whatever the EOs say right now, just a cautionary place, even if you're not the one planning it. I think one thing that we have to think about as school districts is particularly if we are the convener of an event that involves a larger community, like a parade type situation, we can't control people gathering. And so I think we have to be careful. Like, if we're in a situation where a parade happens and all of a sudden people are just tired of being inside and now we're lining the sidewalks and people are shoulder to shoulder kind of situation, you will end up with people within your community also that then blame the school district for bringing people together and, not practicing social distancing. So although I'm not in any way saying, don't do it, and you have no control necessarily of how people approach it, it's just, I think, a cautionary piece for us to think about. Everybody likes to be critical. They like to be critical when we're closed and not allowing proms and graduations. They'll also be critical when we're allowing them and somehow they feel that are enabling things that shouldn't happen. And so just kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about these different things, that we don't want to be looked at as school districts as being a part of the problem and not part of the solution as we go through this.
Right. Well, in our case, the parade is being organized by the parents of a senior. The school has nothing to do with it.
I see one that I think is interesting that goes into maybe the kind of mental health aspect. Pam posted from Farmington Some Good News show. I don't know if all of you have seen it, but John Krasinski, who used to be with The Office TV show, started it right as the pandemic started. I think they've done maybe 5 episodes now. And he is sharing good news nationally, kind of highlighting positive things that are happening. He's had nurses on, he's had, all kinds of people on. My wife actually does communications for one of the state departments, and she created Some Good News for them and is the anchor in that situation. They have had tremendous response from their employees of that. Like, they really like it. So I think a school district doing that, releasing it virtually, I think is something that your teachers, your community members, you can do it via Zoom, you can do it via Facebook. There's not a cost to it. It doesn't have to be just in your community. You can share more broadly. They can be stories from your teachers about a great interaction through Zoom or through remote learning. I think that's a neat idea from a school district perspective to try to think about taking on. And I think it won't have to be, we're all going to change after this, as this moves forward. And things like Some Good News, we talk often about not seeing positive things about education in the news. Now, I think we've seen a lot of that under the pandemic, but if we can build on that so that people think, oh, Some Good News is great to hear, and now that's something that you run during the course of a school year and your larger community gets to see it, like what a great thing to continue outside of the pandemic and still share what's happening in your district. So I love that one. I think that is one that people could take on and really build upon as we move forward with that. And if you're wondering what that is specifically, Google Some Good News and you'll find it, whether it be Farmington's or John Krasinski's, and you'll see what we're talking about. And definitely something I think to think about. See, Jan also just posted on the social emotional that Michigan Virtual has put some items up and some learning related to social and emotional welfare. And I will say that they're a good resource. And Michigan Virtual has actually done a tremendous amount of work during this pandemic to get PD available to your staff members. Even if you don't use them for delivery of classes, they do have a lot of resources for your teachers and for other individuals to access. So I would encourage you to access that. Stacy Bogard on our team just posted the YouTube video on Some Good News. So definitely take a look at that and think about that. Other things, let's see, it's just after 12:30. Other things in the graduation space that people want to talk about? I don't see any immediate hands up.
Actually, we've got Debi from Romulus.
Okay, Debbie, I was just going to start flipping pages to see if I was missing any.
I'm here. Hi. So what our district is doing is there is the Grace Lake Corporate Center in the township next to us. And so for our seniors, what they really wanted was to be able to walk across the stage and have their name called. And receive a diploma. So we have reached out to this corporate center. It's actually, they have quite a large piece of property. There's trails, there's a lake. It's just a beautiful place. And so tentatively, the board, we're going to be discussing this and make sure that we have everything in place. And just pending board approval, our graduation will be held there on a Sunday, June 20th, because then there won't be employees in the parking lot. And the plan is that seniors will line up in cars and then walk one at a time across the stage. And so that's still in the works. We're going to iron out those details at a meeting tonight and then in the next week. But tentatively, that's our plan, so that our seniors can walk across the stage. It's a beautiful property for taking pictures. Of course, we can't control, if families are mingling and interacting, but we are setting up a safe ceremony with social distancing in mind so that our seniors would have that. And they actually had requested that site too. So they've had a lot of hands-on in planning their commencement. And so I'm glad about that.
Thanks, Debbie. I see Edward, who we couldn't get on from a voice perspective, posted it from Mason County Eastern, both graduation information, but also touch base on, the continuing struggle. And I know it's everywhere, but in rural areas, internet access is still a real struggle. I don't know if you heard or listened to the podcast that I had with Senator Stabenow last week, but we talked about rural broadband access. We talked about E-rate. I know Jen has done some updates related to the kind of HEROES legislation that came out of the House in DC. They put a tremendous amount of money into E-rate. We're waiting to see what the Senate will do. They're likely not taking any action until June. But that is a space, Edward, you're not alone in that rural areas and even in some suburban spaces, or even urban for that matter, in a time when we don't have, where we're hearing about, cuts from state for funding, trying to gear up and actually provide learning, particularly if this has to continue at all into the fall, for hotspots on buses, like you mentioned in your post, or anything else like that. That is a tough space, and that's why we are now pushing so many people towards the kind of the federal effort to get, money. How we're going to pay this all back 10 years from now, I don't know, but that doesn't help our kids this year when we need to figure out what learning is going to look like. So those were great things to bring up. And I can see others posting now on the Wi-Fi kind of access type issues. And that may be the answer in the short term. And I've seen that where Wi-Fi hotspots are getting put in buildings that have parking lots, and it's not ideal, but at least people can go there and download materials or whatever it is. So I think that's a good post. Let's see, do we have any other hands right now on the graduation space?
We don't. There was a question that had popped up just in regard to with people who are making graduation plans, whether or not they're, requiring masks, or how they're kind of working through that piece of it.
Well, and I think on this one, and again, we're not in the legal space because we don't know what's going to happen in June. I think it's going to be of best interest to districts to try to err on the cautionary side, and if social distancing is being enforced at that point, and I know the students will likely hate it, but that will be a place where you're going to hope to try to set an example, would be at least my advice from a non-legal and just a thinking about it from a what's the perception kind of space. And at a bare minimum, if you're the board and the administration handing them out, I think even there that becomes more important than the kid walking across the space, because we all know that the masks are more about protecting others from us than us from others. And so if we're wearing them, at least we don't risk one of our kids somehow holding responsible a school district if they end up getting sick. So I do want to talk and pivot a little bit. If I talked about teacher appreciation as an item to discuss, and feel free to throw up continual points on graduation or talk about them. But teacher appreciation, I think, probably means more in this month than it ever has, at least in recent memory. Not that we shouldn't be appreciating them all the time, but I even think about more in the kind of social emotional well-being for the teacher side of things. I think that teachers, just like all of us and like our kids, are struggling. They particularly, now I'm generalizing, but I'll say particularly at the elementary level, the bond that our teachers have with those young kids is pretty intense. And I know a number of elementary teachers that they are really kind of struggling through this. And I was actually talking to my son's teacher last week, and she's responsible for cleaning out their desks and lockers to be able to put their stuff and have them come and pick it up. And she was, having concern about how she would emotionally handle that process, just having to do that on her own. And so I think of this space when we think about teacher appreciation, it's something to deal with right now for sure. And I want people to raise their hands and see if you've done anything. And if you haven't, you've got time to try to move your administration into a space to do that. But I also think that this will be an ongoing piece that not in Teacher Appreciation Month a year from now, but the social emotional well-being of the staff in your districts, including your superintendents, has to be a thing that is thought about regularly. And if we are in any kind of remote learning space in the fall, that's going to be a place where I think you probably, as a leadership, as governance, should have some expectations of so much focus is on the kids. So if there is if your staff is working right now on a plan for being back in the fall and half classes, all classes, or remote, like as part of that plan, one of the things you're going to want to ask for is, what's our plan for our employees? How are we going to touch base with them on a regular basis? Who's going to do that? I think that piece is going to be important to continue the learning process, because a teacher that is, struggling to function because of lack of emotional support is impacting those kids. So Let's kind of open it up. I'll quit talking. People raise hands. Have you done anything that you think is really interesting in the teacher or staff appreciation space during the month of May?
While we're waiting for people to raise their hands, there's been a couple of things in the chat. Katie has made staff shirts and handwritten cards to each staff and mailed them out. They have 35 staff, and she said it was around $400 for that. And Pam shared in Farmington that they did a social media campaign with the superintendent sending a thank you email to all staff, writing a letter to parents, highlighting staff and their dedication, and a video, which are all awesome. Another video from board members to staff from Christopher Lewis.
And maybe I'm missing, oh, I see Michael's got his hand up. You can talk, Michael. I think you're on mute.
I was just trying to hit the unmute button. So our superintendent just at a board meeting said, hey, does anybody have any ideas about what to do? And we did do a video, I guess, that was cool. It seemed to be well appreciated by the teachers. It was also a good thing for our board to in this time of social distancing, to be collaborating together to put the video together. So
yeah, that is important. I mean, we talk about staff and the social emotional well-being of the board members. I mean, I've talked to a lot of board members, and your disconnection with your peers locally is a struggle. And clearly, even events like this, where it's less about us and more about you guys talking with each other, is an attempt to try to bring some sense of normalcy to the governance side of things, because I understand that the difficulty of just not being in that space. And I think the other piece is with lack of regular meetings in person. I hear every once in a while from a board where they don't feel their superintendent as engaged with them as they were if they were in a face-to-face environment. And that really, that can depend on kind of style. And I, run into the same thing as a leader at MASB, like started off strong in communication with staff. And I think I've let it slip just because if it's not in the front of your mind and you're dealing with so many other things, that can get left behind. I see others are posting ideas on here, others that want to talk about things they've done in the staff appreciation space.
I can't find the raise my hand button, so I'm just going to unmute myself.
You're good, Laura.
Okay. At Iron Mountain, our new superintendent this year, not only did he send out letters to our teachers and our educational assistants, he and the board also went together and ordered cookies and special thank you cookies and gift certificates from a local bakery. And then 2 of our board members and myself went out and personally delivered them to all of the houses. So for the people that were there, it was nice to be able to, say hello through the door or the window and leave it on the porch. And then for the people who weren't there, when they got home later in the afternoon, they, all responded, "Oh, this is so much appreciated. Thank you so much for thinking of us."
No, that was a great idea too. I think that, we think back to when we do teacher appreciation in our schools, oftentimes that month might coincide, or maybe earlier we did something and the PTA is set up and parents are making, cookies and other things to bring to parent-teacher conference nights or whatever to appreciate the teachers. And I know lots of people are baking at home, but I think still having somebody else bring you baked goods is always a bonus in this space for sure. I see, the mask question has brought up a lot of kind of chat comments. I know at least under the current, for many of the employers that have come back under the different EOs, they're being required to wear masks and even having their employers required to wear masks. So that will be something for school districts to think about. And You know, it might be even something that it makes me think about to see whether MASB might be able to find, you know, maybe a vendor that can work on a statewide basis with school districts, so school districts aren't doing all the research on the mask space, and maybe we might be able to help at least find a direction for districts. But I appreciate individuals sharing with each other what they're doing. We did it here at MASB. When we get back in the office, everybody will have masks, and I've ordered those, but I don't think the woman that I ordered them from is in the space to be able to do anything like that on a statewide basis. Angie, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Don. How are you?
I am fine.
That's good. We have a vendor here in Farmington Hills, and he was gone through our school districts and everything, and he has sent out a request from me on Facebook and said, hey, you know, if anybody's interested, I'm willing to make masks with the logo on it and he's willing to do it for students, staff, and your CO offices. So I don't have the information right now, but I can get that out to anyone that wants it. He's talked to our PR person, Diane Bauman, and so him and I are working on trying to do that for the district.
Oh, tremendous. And Angie, if you want, I mean, maybe it's a conversation with him first. You know, if he's willing to go outside of your district and take on some others and understand that there could be more than he can handle. But if he's willing to at least entertain that, you can send me the contact information, and on our COVID page, we could get that information out there. So at least school districts would have one resource, but we will look for others in that space too.
Yeah, he does. He will do it, design it to whatever you want, even your school logo or whatever. He's really good. So I'll reach out to you, Don.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Makes me think we need MASB masks.
I know that'll be a good one to pass out.
Let's see, we have about 10 minutes left. We, of course, can leave early, but I'm just looking to see if anybody else is throwing their hand up. Doesn't look like it. I'm just looking to see if there's any in the comments that I want to touch on. You know, I did see a lot of people doing video, and I do think that is a space that we've all become a little more familiar with, and we can do you know, on our own, and it works, you know, quite well. I think our expectations on quality of video now probably have gone down in the sense that we're willing at this time to accept what we can when we're trying to share with each other. And I just have to say, you know, I said it in other calls at the beginning, but you know, just the ideas that you shared today, the things that you're doing in your communities are really tremendous. And I really hope that your citizens, you know, Laura mentioned kind of the negative space related to the prom situation and a group of parents. But I really hope that the citizens in your communities really see what you're trying to do for your districts. Like that is, you know, if there's an appreciation that needs to happen, it's to school board members and their governance and leadership with your superintendents in the space. It's just one of those things that hopefully will not go unnoticed in this. So I will say thank you very much on behalf of MASB for what you continue to do in your districts. I do see somebody, last question here, they say, it doesn't have to be, but I will, that's just what they said. For those that are doing virtual graduations, oh yes, if any, yeah, technology or platform, if you're doing a virtual graduation in any way, do you have a specific technology platform that you are using? And I know there's a lot of different platforms out there for kind of large groups and conferencing and other things. Maybe you're just using Zoom or Google Meets or something like that, but if you know that, you know, post it. And any of these things, if you have information today that you've said, oh, I'll get that information, you can send that to MASB, you can send it directly to me, you can send it to Stacy Bogard, and we will make sure then that that information is shared. So if it's a graduation item, if it's a teacher appreciation item, a mask item, you can send that into MASB, and we will make sure that information gets shared to make sure that this information, the good ideas that you have, can get out to a few more people. I see a local bank sponsoring a billboard for seniors. You know, that's another place is how do you engage your business leaders, I think, who understand the struggle that's happening right now for them, and particularly those businesses that are still moving along. I mean, it's harder with those that have been shut down for a period of time, but I think a lot of them like the idea of giving back in this time, particularly when you're sending a good message. So I think that's another great thing to, you know, have a billboard or have other items, or maybe it's a business that helps sponsor the signs that you're putting up in yards or something along those lines, because we all understand the kind of financial situation for kind of districts in this space. I will say if there's kind of any last minute items that you want to bring up, we'll try to talk about them. Otherwise, we'll let you guys go early. Again, appreciate what you shared. I thought there were some great ideas that others can take away. And let's see, another one, sharing electronic pictures of all your graduating seniors. You know, this is the opportunity we wanted to give all of you. It's hard to share when you don't get to go out and attend our events or see each other. And so this is the idea that we could bring you together to share with each other and make it better in your communities. So thank you very much. I don't see anybody jumping to raise a hand, so I'll say go on with the rest of your day. And we are planning, I think we have another one scheduled for this 2 weeks from now. Stacy, what's our topic? Because I can't remember off the top of my head. She's looking it up.
Apologies, because I wasn't remembering right away either. It is on the budget.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And that might mean that we'll only have 2 people on that day. We'll clearly probably have Jen Smith take a more active role in that. And we will, you know, part of that budget process is, again, it's not about us telling you. That's going to be one where we're going to be into the beginning of June. Likely you will have had, more conversations locally. And it's going to be more, again, sharing between board members and superintendents. What are the type of things you're looking at, more than it's going to be hearing what we don't know from the state at that point. But it'll be a space to share what are the things you're dealing with. If you're dealing with your unions that are reopening a contract, that's the type of things, again, a sharing opportunity more than just us talking to you. All right, thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon and a great Memorial Day weekend.